What is up, guys? My name is D3. Welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links video here on Duel Links Central. Let's go ahead and go over all of the structure decks. We're going to review them, and I want to pretty much give you guys like my general perspective on the decks and which ones are the best ones that you guys, especially geared more towards the newer players, should be picking up for the first time or picking up and trying to improve upon. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Subscribe if you're new, if this is your first time finding the channel. Love to have you stick around here for more content on Duel Links. And let's try to hit a like goal of 110 likes on this video to start off with. So quick breakdown. Very first card, very first one of these decks I think is like the best one at the very top of the totem pole. It's the Warrior deck. Next I'll say Dragon deck. Next I'll say Hero deck. Next I'll say Yugi deck. So I'm gonna go over all of them. Feel free to agree, feel free to disagree. That's fine with me. Let me know why in the comments. We're gonna go through all of the decks. So we're gonna start off with the Dragonic Force, excuse me. Now all these decks are meant to be used with the requisite field spells. Peak performance is the Mountain field spell, that allows the dragon type monsters to get a couple hundred attack point buff. Now, Felgrand Dragon is a really cool card, but very specific card, so keep that in mind. And one thing I want to do is I do not want this list to become, hey, you need 3 copies of this card, or you need 2+ copies of this card, whatever. I want it to be just out of the pack, because if you get it past one time, it only lets you get one time. Every other time, it makes you pay actual cash for the deck. So some of these cards you need 3 copies of, or 2+ copies of, depending on your deck. So keep that in mind. Now, another really cool card in this deck is Heretic Dragon of Nuit. Another boss card in the deck that's awesome to have is Exploder Dragon. And then, of course, Hunter Dragon is a solid card to have, too. Tyrant Wing and Dragon's Rebirth are the best cards that you want to have. I was going to say Dragonic Force again. So, once again, Felgrand Dragon is probably a little too specific for my liking, but there are combos that you can use it with. Heretic Dragon of Nuit is really good because it's a good card for offense and defense. Now, this card combos specifically with a card like Tyrant Wing. Now, Tyrant Wing is an equipped card, pretty much. It targets a Dragon-type monster, which then pops this guy's effect along with Tyrant Wing buffing it. Now, when this guy is targeted, it allows you to bring out a dragon monster from your deck with 0 attack and 0 defense. Now, you may say, oh, well, 0 attack, 0 defense, that's useless. Well, yeah, I would tend to agree with you, but Dragon's Rebirth exists, and then from there, you can use that card as fodder for this card, which will then allow you to pop out another dragon monster from your hand or from your graveyard. You could have a very powerful dragon in your hand or in your graveyard. You're basically swapping a worthless 0 attack, 0 defense monster for a potentially powerful monster with this card, which is why I said you probably want 2 to 3 copies of this card depending on what you run. This deck you do want to probably tweak. You want to drop cards like Dragon Treasure and Kamori Dragon. You can incorporate any sort of powerful dragon type monsters that you have. You can even drop Watt-tailed Dragon for something like, you know, 3 Blue Eyes or Tyrant Dragon if you have that, or other things, maybe Vanguard of the Dragon, Kid Moto. There are other solid options you can pick up and put in the deck. I don't really think Alter for Tribute is too good. It's like a last resort type of card, so keep that in mind. I don't really like these spell cards either. I think they're too specific along with Felgrand Dragon, and they pretty much revolve around tributes, which I don't really think tributes are always conducive to Duel Links. Sometimes you don't want to have to tribute, especially 2 tributes for monsters, but one of those cards allows you to tribute a level 5 or higher monster for a level 7 or higher, whatever it is. So, like, I guess, but I don't really think all the time that tributes are conducive to a game like this, which we'll get to in a minute when we talk about the Warrior deck and the Jaden deck. So the Spellcaster deck is kind of unfortunate in my opinion. I don't think there's anything in here that's really too good. Their strongest monster is Trance. Now keep in mind all these guys will have a couple hundred more attack due to the field spell that's active along with defense. So he's going to be at what, 400 defense? Everything in the game can get over that. If he gets popped into defense by Sphere Karibo or enemy controller, you're pretty much done with this card. Unless you go out of your way to protect him with your own windstorms or whatever you run. I'm not talking about that specific of a scenario. Just trying to give you guys the faults of the card. A man with a Wajat is going to be like an 1800 attack monster under that field spell. That's fine. He allows you to see the opponent's back row, but like, I don't really know how conducive that is to this game. Knowledge is always going to be power, right? Knowledge is always power because you can play around it, which is why Pegasus' skill to allow you to see the opponent's face-down cards was so good, but I don't really see it ran anymore. But, again, I guess he would be one of the better cards in this deck, and that's not really saying anything with all the powerhouses that are running around now. Magical Undertaker is cool. It allows you to special summon a Spellcaster-type monster from your graveyard, which is awesome to have. It's a flip effect, so it's not the worst thing. You can use that to combo with something like Blue Dragon Summoner, for example, if you wanted to do something like that. And from Blue Dragon Summoner's effect, if it gets destroyed, you can pop out a trance. So you can keep that in mind as well. Now, this card is really cool to have. It's a 1900 beater under the field spell. Now, he was cool because previous to the Structure Deck's release, you could only own 2 copies of this card, or 1 copy actually. They had only given out 1 copy of this card prior to that. So you can pick up 2 in this deck, which is where I got the number 2 from, and then own 3 of the copy of the card. Spell Wall is because you get the effects. No summon of a spellcaster can be negated, or target one spellcaster you control. It can attack. If it attacks, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. So it pretty much stops things like metamorphs and all that stuff. It has its uses. It's not a bad card, but again, I don't really like the cards that are too specific, and this one isn't super specific, but one thing in here is glaring. They can't take any damage, but it's a good card if you have a spellcaster out and you just need to get over another monster for whatever reason, and you're scared of your opponent's back row. That's what this card is for. You think they have like a metamorph, a mirror wall, or something, they can't do it. So it's basically a built-in anti-magic arrows, I guess. Book of Secret Arts is like Dragon Treasure. It's fodder. You can drop it unless you want it. I don't think Destructive Draw is too good because it pretty much requires too many life points for my liking. But once again, this is completely up to you guys if you want to purchase these or like pick them up for whatever reason. Maybe you want 1 or 2 cards in them and you want to take them and you strip the decks down in different ways. You can do that as well. Soul Rope's a really solid card. I don't think 1,000 is too much, just a one-time 1,000 as opposed to Destructive Draws continual 700 or potential like 3,000 if it's destroyed. And it allows you to pop another dragon or whatever, a level 4 monster from your deck. The cool thing about that is it's a deck thinner card, but the problem with this is that it's specific to card effects. Now, if your monster gets destroyed by something like Super Rush Headlong, I'm pretty sure you can trigger this in return to that. So keep that in mind, but that's not going to help you in case of like your monster being just flat out ran over by another powerful monster or what have you, or it being a defense mode or being ran over that way. So Ready for Intercepting is a cool card for countering spellcasters and warriors. Forgive me if I make any mistakes. I'm talking really fast because I'm trying to get this done because I don't want this to be a 20-minute video for you guys. Rope of Life is a good card too because it allows you to bring back the monsters that are destroyed by battle. It causes you to discard your whole hand, which is a good and bad thing. You can potentially combo cards with that. They should not miss their timing depending on the scenario, and the monster comes back with 800 plus attack. Now, the cool thing about that is that in the game like Duel Links, you're often playing with 1, maybe 2 cards in your hand anyway. If that, sometimes you just simply don't even have a hand. You do need at least 1 card in your hand for this card to activate, but that's about it. That card's fodder at the end. So the key cards in this one will be Rope of Life, Soul Rope, and then Neo right here. I mean, Man of Vajad is decent. I think this card's probably got a little bit more utility in it, depending on what you use it with. It's not the best card in this deck due to the way that the deck is constructed, but it is a cool card to have. And I guess you can use it to target Neo as well. I'm not really high on Trance. I like the card and I like the concept of him, you know, being a powerhouse monster, strong enough to get over common threats regularly, like a Red Eyes, like a Dark Magician or a Neos or whatever. But I just don't like that he's paper thin defensively. So keep that in mind. The last couple of decks are Heroes Rising, and then we'll go over the Warrior deck. This one uses the Where the Heroes Dwell skill that came out with Jaden. So it pops a Skyscraper card on your field. Blaze is a really good card. Blaze Man's a really good card. 2-part effect. He also can allow you to fish out a poly from your deck. Kind of acts like a Fusion Sage in that regard. Secondly, I built a deck around him. I haven't shown it off yet with the help of my friend on Twitter, Zenrot. Now, this card is cool because if you use this effect, you can discard a card like Necro Shade from your deck. You can fish out a Necro Shade from your deck, for example, and literally send it to the graveyard. And then on the following turn, because you can't do it on the same turn because they have that in this card, you can use Necro Shade's effect and then pop out a Neos that's in your hand, or you can just use this guy's effects and a Neos from your hand to the graveyard, which Neos is not a part of this deck anyway, neither is Necro Shade. But you get my point. You can use that effect and then use like Soul Resurrection or Oversoul. So it's a good card to have. It's just weird in this deck. Like, it's not the most conducive card in this deck because the only target for that would be another E-Hero, like one of these guys. And they're not the best cards because he takes on their identical stats. So basically, the best he can get offensively would be a 1600 attack pretty much, I think, because he can't fish out the fusion monsters. So that's pretty much it. You get the common art Polymerization. Lady Heat's a really good card in tandem. If you have 2 or 3 of these, you can start to do a lot of burn damage. So keep that in mind, especially because this deck is pretty much built on allowing you to do damage in hordes like that. So I don't really dislike the deck. I just don't like the premise of its best card, or most powerful card, being a 2300 monster. Under Skyscraper, that's 3300, but that's only if you're attacking, so it's not good defensively. And this card doesn't have the best defense. Hero Barrier is actually a really solid card for like 99% of the deck. I think Rottweiler is the only card that can't utilize that, but Rottweiler is meant to be destroyed anyway, so keep that in mind too. It's not a bad card, not a bad deck overall. I don't want to make it seem like it is. It's a very good auto-duel deck too, because the computer can handle dueling with this. Heat is pretty much the best monster in this deck though. The deck is centered around having him on the field and then popping out 2 more due to the effect of either longevity by defense like Hero Barrier or Hero's Bond here. You can pop out a couple more. This guy becomes very powerful, or if you can do the opposite, you can have her out and then start to do a minimum of 600 damage if you have 3 heroes on the field. So keep that in mind. This card allows you to do piercing damage, which is cool. It kind of feeds into the concept of the deck. Fusion Recovery is pretty much Rottweiler. This card allows you to gain up to 3,000 life points, so it's a cool card as well. And a Hero Emerges is probably one of the better cards in the deck for its ability to allow you to special summon a monster out. I feel like this deck needs to be stripped down in a few different ways to kind of get a little bit better and more consistent, because cards like Voltic and Flash don't need to really be here. They're kind of just really throw-ins. This card allows you to remove itself and then 3 other hero monsters from your graveyard, which is a high cost to pay, considering it doesn't say up to 3. It says literally 3 hero monsters from your graveyard. So I don't really think that's going to be really, you know, active ever unless you're doing polymerizations and then they're in the graveyard, but that's very, very specific, and I don't like those super specific scenarios. But if you can do it, I mean, it has a good effect. You know, you can target one normal spell in your graveyard and add it to your hand. That's cool. But really, in the concept of this deck, what is that, a Hero's Bond or Heated Heart? Those are pretty much the only real targets for that, unless you want a polymerization back, I guess. But then you've removed your cards from play. This card is cool because he allows you to get those monsters back if he inflicts battle damage. Only problem with that is that 99% of the time, he's not going to be able to do battle damage. Only way he can do battle damage to most monsters in the game is under Skyscraper, which at maximum, he's only getting over a 1900 at max attack monster. He cannot do anything more because his attack will only rise to 2000. So it's okay. This card is going to be better when cards like Miracle Fusion come out, because we need a lot of hero stuff. We need Emergency Call. We need Ocean. We need Stratos. We need Prisma. We need a lot. Now, this deck, the reason I rated it so high is because I think this one comes out of the box as like the only deck you really do not need to tinker with. I don't think Guilford the Legend is all too good, but the rest of the deck is really solid, especially DD Warrior. This card is incredible. They purposely give you 1 copy, but you really want to try to get this like a couple times for certain decks. Very good card. Now, the only problem with this guy's effect is that it's after damage calculation, but when it battles a monster, you just flat out banish everything. Whether it can destroy the monster or not, you just banish it. If it runs into like a defensive monster, for example, like an Ojama King, for example, like you can't really get in a scenario like that due to Ojama King's effect, but say, for example, it could, he would remove it from the game. It would just banish it. So a very good card overall. Definitely worth at least being an SR. And then, of course, an 1800 beater here, normal monster. This deck is centered around having a lot of back row that buffs everybody up, and it's really easy to get a lot of monsters on the field that are 2,500 plus attack. So it's very powerful. This deck is really good. The only problem I can see with this deck is that it's prone to getting its back row clogged, but that's pretty much conducive to the way that this deck plays. Having a card like A-Forces, having a couple of them on the field is a flat-out powerhouse. Having the field spell on the field as well, and then having a card like this, if you have other X-Saber monsters on the field, you know, you get in a position where everything is getting buffed tremendously. And the only real defense in this deck is the Staunch Defender, which isn't the best defensive card either. Jar of Avarice is here to give you your quick play or your equipped spell cards back. That's pretty much it. And then this card allows it to get over most Dragon decks. So pretty much in a head-to-head with the Dragon deck, it would win simply because of this card and, you know, the other combos. So that's pretty much why I thought this deck was so good. And then, of course, you do have a lot of utility in here, right? I don't really think Marmoting Captain is the best card. Of course, it would be a lot better if this was, for example, Marauding Captain, but it's not. I'm sure it has its uses. Maybe I'm just overlooking something. But X-Saber Galahad is awesome if it's attacking. It gets weaker if it has to defend. But if you get in a position where you've buffed up your monsters so much, the negative that this guy has doesn't really matter. And you can then protect it by tributing another monster on your field. And maybe you need to clear up some rows. Maybe you need to get rid of a monster to clear up your field so you can play another card or a combo or whatever, right? So keep that in mind too. A very good deck overall. Once again, if you're a new player, consider picking up the Warrior deck and the Dragon deck first. At the end of the day, I know Jaden's fake pictures on the other one, so of course you're going to pick that up. That was the first one I picked up, to be fair. So keep that in mind too. I mean, if you want to pick up something specifically due to how you play, that's not what this video is for. I mean, this video is just going over all of them and giving you guys kind of like my opinion on the cards and the way that they rank. But pick up what you want to play, pick up and build it however you want to build it, because it's your account, it's your game, you have the liberty for that. I'm just here as like a, you know, second consideration type of thing. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed it. Hit that like goal, and I'll catch you guys in the next Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links video, guys. Take it easy.